good evening. It is Monday night, but maybe not wherever you may be listening to the show or watching the show. Thank you so much for tuning into The Yard Sign, the most important relevant podcast in politics, or as I also like to say, the most diverse conservative podcast in politics. Your host is always Jonny Torres. Thank you so much for tuning in. And if you're on the audio version of our podcast, we appreciate you for subscribing to our tech overlords at Google, Apple, Spotify, Audible, Amazon, iHeartRadio, Odyssey, and Samsung podcast platforms. Don't forget, you can catch all of our episodes there. And we continue to make huge gains in the audio version of our show. So thanks to everybody listening. And again, it would mean a lot to us if you drop a review, drop a rating as we continue to grow the audience. Now, it's officially a top 200 podcast globally and a top 150 podcast here nationally. So thank you again to anybody who's been on the show and Anibal, David Cabrera, Lindsay, who produces the show. It's just been a wild ride, and it gives us a lot of excitement and momentum when we get good news like that. So thank you for watching. There is a lot to talk about, but as you might imagine, most of it is centered around one topic and one topic only. So let's go ahead and knock out tonight's topics before we jump into tonight's guests. Sorry, I just got something in my eye here. Here we go. Okay. So Russia invades Ukraine, in case you hadn't heard, in case you've been under some metaphorical rock or literal rock, maybe for some of you. We'll do our best to kind of pick apart and update you on where things stand and our just brilliant perspectives on how all this is going to play out as we continue to see this evolve in many different ways. And then, of course, we'll bring it back here to the good old U.S. Unfortunately, no room for Florida topics today. My apologies to the beautiful state of Florida. But we'll review the CDC's new guidelines as they prepare for the midterms. Apparently, the CDC is up for re-election. And we'll also talk about the Scotus nominee that President Biden nominated like on a Friday at like 6 o'clock. I mean, you'd think he was actually trying to hide the nomination. It was, it was just announced so poorly. So on that note, we'll jump right into today's show with going over to our big table. We've got, the usual face and a face we haven't seen in a while. So from left to right is the very left. No, I'm sorry. It's the very right, Anibal David Cabrera.
Hello, is this on? Oh, it's working. Oh, look at that.
Right politically, but not always objectively.
Progress. It's a wonderful thing.
I know. When have I actually had the mic on right at the start of the show?
It's been a few months.
Exactly. It means it's going to be a good show.
Now that we have the white representative from Pasco County here.
Oh, my God.
It's like that, huh?
Well, despite all appearances, it's an all-Latino show today.
We have the flavors of the rainbow here.
Yeah. Believe it or not, he does not have COVID. That gentleman in the middle is Chris Licata joining us. What's up, buddy?
I'm doing great.
Great to have you back.
Yeah, it's great to be back. I've gone to the field.
The other side.
I've gone to the field for a while.
You've literally been sent to the pastures.
I've been put out into pasture for a while.
And yet, no tan lines.
Well,
You're probably the only person in Pasco County without tan lines. Or a redneck of some kind.
Let's back off. Let's back off of this conversation.
I do appreciate the hat, though, and then for those of you who can't quite get it in the screen there, it's a DeSantis 2024 hat. So loving that.
Make America Florida.
Yeah. Overwhelmingly, the choice for the presidential election without Trump.
Yeah, going off of that straw poll.
Respectable 28%. I was not surprised.
28% in the straw poll, but Trump had 60-something.
Yeah.
68%.
It's funny because, I loved getting excited about CPAC. I've been to CPAC a couple times, and man, as cool as it is to have it here in Florida, and I didn't get to go this year, but there's something about it not being right being in Florida. Like it's like it should be in DC. It should, it should be in the heart of democracy.
We're too close.
Wait, DC's the heart of democracy?
Well,
it's the heart of the republic.
Tries to be, anyways. Well, isn't it though? Like, I mean, again, so to date myself as to how long it's been since I've gone. Like, I remember watching Andrew Breitbart debate liberals in the hotel lobby in Washington, D.C. Sometimes what was happening outside of CPAC was actually more entertaining than what was happening in CPAC.
Well, I think
That still happened this time
It's
around.
still very
Probably.
true.
More people were more excited about the parties that were happening outside of CPAC than actually attending CPAC.
But I do remember, Glenn Beck was keynote speaker, which he actually keynoted the Reagan dinner at CPAC this year, and Rush Limbaugh was the keynote the year after that, I think, and so.
But you're saying that they should have CPAC back in DC? I don't agree.
Yeah, I mean,
No, I don't agree.
Not right now, not with all this COVID nonsense and them being the kind of jerks they're being about the whole thing. But I think there's an excitement about, going and enveloping yourself in conservatism in our nation's capital.
No, I like putting the show on the road. Actually, I think we should take the yard sign to Pasco County.
Do we have the right documentation to get the Pasco County?
Do they have internet in this Pasco County you speak
Oh
of?
my goodness!
Will I get pulled over 4 times while we enter the county?
Oh, don't be like that. Don't be like.
You got to stay along 19. You got to don't get off at 19.
Don't be like.
This is 19.
US 19.
I cannot say anything. I get very triggered with all the strawberry fields and
That's-
pastures.
That's not Pasco County.
Oh, the
Speaking of cows and pastures, shout out to my friends in Hernando County who are celebrating the grand opening of the extension of 589 and the
That's Citrus County.
that's what did I say? Oh, I said Hernando.
Somewhere in the Great North.
It's
Citrus
north
County.
of Hillsboro. It's just
North. North of Hillsboro is Central
It's
Florida.
just like a roll of the dice at that
Until
point.
you get to Gator Country of the Florida Gators.
there's a lot of counties north of here. Okay?
I don't
They
know
have
any.
names.
I don't know any. And then
No,
from
see,
there-
like for people from Tampa, it's Hillsboro and then Tallahassee. It's like it's just that's just kind of the order of things.
And then if you went to FSU, it's still Hillsboro to Tallahassee.
Right.
There's
Exactly.
no Gainesville.
Yeah.
There is no
so
Gainesville.
Orlando, Tallahassee.
Yeah, well, I'll have to agree with that for my wife, who is a FSU grad. So
That's why she's running.
Aw.
And what is she running for?
A
Hernando
blonde
County
from
School-
FSU? No.
No.
running for Hernando County School Board.
Absolutely preposterous. Oh wait, my wife went to FSU. Oh, and she's also a blonde.
You would think it's like something
Oh
in
my
the water.
God, we are all dating or married to blondes.
Oh, what have we done?
Hi, pony.
So,
Show has
yes,
gotten off to
on
a
that note,
rocky start.
People
haven't
love the
even-
entry.
well, we
People
haven't-
love our entry.
yeah, we haven't even gotten to the first topic, but on that note, yes, shout out to Jen Licotta, who is running for school board in Pasco County.
Hernando County.
Hernando, God,
Can you please
would you stop moving?
pick a county and stick to it?
Holy
You just
cow.
can't get
What is
the
wrong
northern
with
counties
you?
correct. There's a lot of them
No.
up there.
I've been out of the out of government service for too long.
Have the governor's mansion for too long.
Well, I used to have to spend like once a month. I had to be in each of those counties.
And yet you cannot figure out which one you're talking about.
Well, but again, I meant Citrus County, home of the Crystal River, and all the manatees, and
Because there's not manatees in Hillsborough County.
yeah, but these are special ones because they go to the Three Sister Springs.
Okay, at least he got the fact that Three Sisters is in Citrus County.
It's all coming back to me now.
Isn't there a...
We
Like
should
Celine
really
Dion.
institute a Florida geography class in the K through 12 education.
I thought there was a
I thought there was, but
geography
apparently
class.
There's
there's not.
67 counties.
Oh,
man. That's
first of
too
all,
many.
Jonathan
Too
didn't go to
many.
school here in the United States. He went to school where he was born.
Look, the only
North Cuba, Miami.
that's right. The only ones you study are the ones that have interstates, and then as
Weren't you
secondary.
just talking about an interstate extension?
Secondary to that, then it's the ones that have road traps.
Yes,
I mean,
now
speed traps.
you're on the map because you have an interstate. Come on. I don't know why things are so complicated these days.
Well, the only reason that Hernando County exists is to get to Citrus County. I mean, that's the.
No, the only reason why Hernando
That's
County
Sumter
exists
County
is
to
to
get
get
to
to
the
Tallahassee.
to get to the villages, because the boomers have to get to the villages
Yeah.
out of here. You know,
Right.
They gotta find their way there. You know.
Yeah, it's like Mecca. They just eventually
Right.
kind of have to make their way there.
Yes.
Oh man!
Oh, wow.
All right,
We've
now we're
officially
gonna
offended
we're
everybody.
good.
let's actually try to start the show. I didn't even start my timer tonight, but
Oh, this is gonna go 3 hours.
with no producer at the last hour. We're going rogue. We're going live.
We're doing it live. Well, again, in case you haven't heard, Russia invading the Ukraine. Putin certainly not bluffing on that front. As we discussed last week, a lot of mixed messages, but also a lot of really interesting things happening. There was supposed to be a meeting with the French President Macron and the United States President Biden with Putin. I don't think that ever happened.
The phone call happened with the French president and the Russian president.
Yeah, but the three of them were supposed to meet.
Only two of them were on the call.
Yeah. And look, what also is getting under my skin is that because at some point, I think Biden should go over there, whether it's to Europe or you know what I mean? Like, I think, to show as a symbolic sign of force, you would think that the American president should go over there.
Well, yes, if we had a strong president.
If we had
a strong president, you'd have, a Ronald Reagan moment of, Mr. Gorbachev, open this gate, tear down this wall. But, stop this war. It's just. But no, we're going to sit here and talk about, Greenpeace, and environmental politics.
Okay, but so let's talk about...
Comedians are having a field day. I saw a cartoonist talking about the administration is very upset that Putin didn't invade Ukraine with electric cars.
Right.
It's like wrong anger, different direction.
Well, this is the crazy thing, right? Because depending on who you ask, we may or may not be flying aircraft all along the Polish border.
There would be nothing wrong if we were.
No, of course not. But again, but Putin could take it as a sign of aggression if we were.
What? Us giving them arms is not a sign of aggression.
Right.
The French literally mailed them bullets. Like, the Swiss have sent them AKs.
Right.
The Swiss.
No, we're giving them them money and weapons.
But Americans are figuring out transportation options to get the president of Ukraine out of Ukraine.
And he's
during
like,
the second day of the bombing.
I don't need evacuation. I need bullets.
How is that the American? Like, how is the
it's about protecting the leader of the country.
No, it was about getting him out so that they could take over.
That's what I'm saying.
No. The Americans wanted to pull Zelensky out in order to have him be a president in exile.
And what happened last time a president left his country before an invasion force entered the capital city? Oh wait, I forgot Afghanistan. And so these things is cyclical. You're seeing what happens with a weak president. The U.S. is leading from behind. It's very weird to see France actually doing what they're doing. Germany taking actual steps to move forward. Yeah. I think this might be a lot happening all at once. And so I don't know what will occur. I mean, last week, it was a 50-50 chance if Putin takes over the Baltic and the two breakaway provinces, or he takes all of Ukraine. We all knew something was going to happen. We just didn't know what to the extent. And now that the Defense Force has actually given him a bloody nose, taken out almost some reports are crazy. Almost 5,000 Russians have been killed so far, thousands of ammunition and depots, and it's crazy what's happening. But they're holding the capital. And
there's so many mixed messages as to, and again, like in any war situation. I mean, again, on some fronts it seems like
fog of war.
The Ukraine army and of course its citizens have been able to kind of hold the Russian army back. In others, you're finding that the Russians are actually making progress, but what seems to be really effective, at least so far, has been the choking of economic resources going to Russia. And again, this isn't the Soviet Union that we're fighting. This is a very different Russia that again is beholden to oligarchs. They're beholden to a global economy. And look, kudos to Germany for saying, hey, look, we obviously screwed up with this fuel deal, but we'll go ahead and, supply more weapons, supply more resources for this fight. I mean, again, everybody's talking about how crazy it is, how unified the European Union is in all of this, which, again, was kind of the point of the European Union in the first place.
Well, it helps that the Brits are out.
Well, I mean,
None of that trans Euro stuff.
Yeah.
No, but all joking aside, yeah, no, it is.
Well, I'm
really
sure
amazing.
honestly, I mean, in some ways, I'm sure they're glad they're out.
Right.
Because they don't have to get involved.
Right. The Brits can make their own policy. And honestly, what's interesting that's going on is that the Germans and the French are playing a game for who's the new, king of the European Union. Mm-hmm. Who's the new emperor of the HRE. And so they're both actually playing in the same direction right now because they realize, this is the right fight.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't agree with that. France, the president of France went to Russia and had a whole thing with Vladimir Putin a week before the invasion, and he came out of that saying they weren't going to invade, and then they invade. So he has egg on his face. And the Germans were
Germans build Nord Stream 2.
Yes, after the Biden administration gave them the permission to do it, also, and at the same time they were brought kicking and screaming onto the battlefield because they were not going to give arms, and now because of so much pressure, they had to do that.
Well, again, these authoritarians, totalitarians, dictators, whatever you want to call them, they're never going to show their cards.
No.
And then what's been interesting to me is that, one of Putin's famous quotes was that World War III was going to be fought with ones and zeros. And really, the only headway I've seen in terms of cyber attacks have actually been on the offensive against Russia, where Anonymous has apparently had some success there. You're seeing I can't remember, there was a country or two that launched cyber attacks towards Russia, and they're seeing some success there. But Russia was supposed to have this kind of cyber army, ready to go. And so in some respects, I wonder if, this is somewhat of a paper tiger, that again, it's kind of Putin really trying to see how long and how far he can get away with this before Russia's really revealed to be weaker than it is.
Well, yeah, and I think that's 110% right. I think Russia has been weak for a decade or more. I mean, really, it was extremely weak in the 90s, and I think Putin was able to kind of build it back up. And then I think he thinks he's stronger than he is after the Georgian conflict in the late 2000s. So, I mean, yeah, it's a paper tiger for sure, but I think he sees himself as a Peter the Great, as a Catherine the Great. You have to, in Russian history, in order to secure your borders, you have to extend them.
Yes.
And
Catherine the Great.
Yeah. And so that's the quote that he's kind of basing all of this policy on. Now what is interesting is over the weekend how a lot of the sanctions that have worked, a lot of the reason, the ruble was down 30% over the weekend and they had to close trading this morning, was because the sanctions that went into place over the weekend, those sanctions were reaction to his nuclear alert status. And I find that really interesting from the perspective that, the West didn't seem to really want to impose harsh sanctions until, oh, wait a second, you're actually playing. Like it woke the West up over the weekend.
I think a lot of people are very a lot of people don't understand how real, and Hector making the comment already, talking about we cannot underestimate Putin's stance on his nuclear arsenal. He's as serious as a heart attack when it comes to his objective. Now that we've seen the Ukrainians be able to put up a fight, there has not been heavy shelling of Kyiv. There's been heavy shelling of the secondary cities, that is starting. And the casualty numbers are going to go up higher and higher. And how does Vladimir Putin get out of this not looking like the bad guy? It's impossible now.
Well, I don't think he cares necessarily of looking like the bad guy or not.
No, that's not what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say if Kyiv can hold its ground without having it completely decimated like they did in Chechnya, like that's the end game. Like you really want to see another European capital city pulverated, and then if that happens, where does the West go from here? Because we've now shown all of our cards when it comes to sanctions. There's nothing really else we can do besides put someone's boots on the ground.
No, we still have the ability to choke off Russian oil supply. We haven't gone after their energy sector.
Yeah, but who does that affect?
After their currency.
That affects Germany. That affects Europe. That affects a lot of the Middle East. Affects Asia. I mean, the U.S. has 8% of its own we import 8% of Russian oil to the United States. One, I was flabbergasted the fact that we are even importing Russian oil. And two, that's how upset I'm getting with this administration. The ridiculous policies that they have allowed themselves have put them in this position. Why is Germany shutting down nuclear power plants? And they thought they could get away with getting cheap oil because they thought diplomacy through economic means was going to get them what they wanted. It didn't work with the Chinese.
Well, and it's all smoke and mirrors for them to be able to achieve these climate change standards that they've set for themselves. And so if they're not actually producing the oil, then that gets them brownie points, with the ECG scores. And, and that's why they stopped the Keystone Pipeline. But we still need a certain amount of oil to keep the country running. Yeah. And so the fact is that now it's actually less environmentally friendly because we're having to ship it in from other countries rather than us drilling it for ourselves and bringing it in through Alaska, through Canada, and into the continental United States.
It's such bullshit. It's such bullshit. We're in this position because of the weakness of 46, because of the decisions that he made to not make us oil independent, and because of the weakness of him allowing the Germans to continue with the Nord Stream 2. When people say, "Oh, you can't blame Biden for this," yes, I can. I can literally point to those decisions.
Everything that has happened under this administration has been completely self-inflicted, and it's funny, but it's sad because it's like we've had presidents who have had crisis thrust upon them in the past, and this president
was wheeled into it.
Well, no, he has created every single crisis. Afghanistan, the inflation. Now the Russia thing is a result of Afghanistan. Is a result of him greenlighting Nord Stream 2.
So let's
all
kind
of
of
this is self-inflicted.
Let's get a little partisan about this here, okay? Because this is, again, it's kind of an interesting dynamic. You saw Russia invade Crimea during the Obama administration in 2014. And then all of a sudden, during the Trump administration,
I was in the Mediterranean. I'm very familiar.
Okay, good. So then you can kind of tell us a little bit about it. But then during the Trump administration, again, despite what you may or may not believe in far of what his relationship was with Putin, Putin didn't make a move, during the Trump administration. Now, fast forward to the Biden administration, and here we find ourselves with Russia invading Ukraine. Now, again, what do you guys think is the difference there? Why wait to see if Trump was going to, did Trump have anything to do with this decision, or is it coincidental that he picked two Democrat presidents to make these moves?
I would say that it's not coincidental that he is perceiving the weakness of the United States, while at the same time, I think there is a 75% chance that Putin would have made some kind of territorial expansion, even if Trump had been reelected. The reason for that is demography, right? The reason for that is that by 2025, he runs out of soldiers. He runs out of 30-year-olds. Yeah. Like the Russian demography is so upside down, and they're aging so quickly that, that's part of the reason that he wants to expand his borders, to extend his borders and create client states around him, is because for the next 20 years, he doesn't have the population to support a large enough military to keep Russia unified and stable.
Ukraine gives him the food. Ukraine gets him the infrastructure. Ukraine gets him the people to actually be able to run
an economic stimulus.
Yeah, and so I think I don't even think he was going to do a client state. I think he was just going to absorb it as a part of Russia. Honestly,
but I'm saying if Trump had won the 2020 election,
I don't think that would have occurred, not winning the 2020 election, but because we'll have that conversation in the future. But the idea of when you don't know what a leader is going to do, you don't make a move like this. With Trump, you had no idea what he was going to do from day to day. And that inconsistency does not work when you're trying to invade a country. And so
but Putin was on a clock.
Yes, but
Putin's on a clock, so he has to do something before 2025.
But not knowing what the president is going to do is the problem. Right. We were talking about this earlier. If we rewind about a week and we had Trump in the White House, Trump would be in Europe somewhere. He would just flown to Europe somewhere.
He'd be sitting in Ukraine and be like,
do it.
Shell the place because you're going to shell me.
Yeah.
And that's going to be, that's not going to work.
That would be something completely that you would never think about it. Because I remember a conversation that they had, and Trump made the comments like, yeah, Putin and I are really good friends, but if he invades, then we're going to have to shell something. And you're like, what? And everyone gets so upset. But that inconsistency of leadership shows that
it's the wild card.
It's the wild card.
Yeah.
And that's what Trump was.
You don't know what they're going to do.
And this is why you're seeing with this current president of Ukraine, who on earth thought a comedian 5 years ago was going to be able to, who was playing a president on a sitcom, was going to become
and
president.
Paddington Bear, by the way.
And Paddington Bear was going to become the president, and at the end of the day, not leave under cloak and dagger when it came to the invasion, but stayed and fought and has continued to fight.
Well, I think, one person kind of pointed it out, when you're talking about the difference in the leadership that we're seeing from him versus, even here in our own country. And they said the biggest difference, he's 44.
Yes.
And it's a whole different mindset. It's a whole different, you still got to fight in you. There's a passion. There's a
well, again, that goes right back to the demography concept.
Right.
Is that Ukraine actually has a decent demography. Yes. So they have the agricultural lands to make food. They have the demography to kind of create. So if Putin at any point thought he could incorporate Ukraine, it solves a lot of his problems. It solves a issue of, okay, I get more distance from Moscow. I don't get an enemy, 600 miles from Moscow, I think is the border. So it's not that far. So pushing out the Russian border is a good idea, but also absorbing the Ukrainian people is a demography issue, and also the natural resources of Ukraine.
Well, for Zelensky, though, you also got to imagine, he knew that this could potentially be an issue when he got into office. You've got to know day one. And you've got to know day one that this might happen.
Potential.
And so I'm sure he had countless nights, countless conversations, both with his family, both with his legislature, both, with, people in leadership, about, okay, how does this play out if it happens? I would imagine you have to go through these hypothetical scenarios.
I think he had less than you would think, because he had the entire European and American establishment, political state departments of all of these other countries telling him, oh, Putin will never do it. He'll never do it. Put it out of your mind. You don't need to worry about that.
Also, he wasn't warmongering. He wasn't saying, yes, they're coming. Yes, they're coming. Help us. He was trying to keep the peace. He was getting upset with U.S. media because they were overblowing things. They were ramping it up.
Yeah.
Because, and you hear these conversations.
They sensationalize
And you hear it now in these conversations with these generals. They are very surprised that Russia decided to invade now, because the winter hasn't come in play yet. So why are you invading now when the roads are a mess, when you could have done that 4 months from now, and the tanks can just roll right through and not have a problem getting stuck? There's just so many problems. The supply chains are going too far. The supply lines are going too far. It's becoming a problem. Russia doesn't have air superiority. Who would have thought Russia wouldn't be able to get air superiority? These are things that you would have assumed would have happened with the Russian military. And it's now saying that you're right. It's like a paper tiger. And I will quote this from McCain, which has become one of my favorite quotes, is that at the end of the day, Russia is just a really fancy gas station.
It's a gas station with a country attached.
With a country attached.
It's a gas station with a country attached.
And that's McCain. And that was now they're really talking about it. So I think we're going to, hopefully they can keep the Capitol functioning and not being under occupation.
But that's the thing, and I think this is part of the reason why Democrats loved trying to pin Trump as an authoritarian, was because, again, he had a very similar persona in that sense that he was unpredictable. I mean, you look at Bolsonaro, you look at the guy in the Philippines, you look at Putin, you look at even Xi Jinping, right? They're unpredictable guys. You realize that you don't want to push them too hard or too far, because you're not sure what kind of a response you're going to get. But again, what is the end goal here? Because
for Russia?
Yeah, I mean,
we can tell you that.
No, but I mean, obviously, he wants Russia for the natural resource. I mean, the Ukraine for all the natural resources and all the things we were just talking about.
No, he wants to defend Russia. We've talked about this already.
Well, he wants to reestablish
the Russian Empire.
But the only way to do that is to be able to fortify the western side, the Eastern Bloc, which was there. Russia is so easily invaded that it's ridiculous how easy it is. The French did it, Jesus. The Germans did it. And if the French can invade you, then anyone can invade you. And Russia itself has 9 entry points. And by taking over Ukraine, you block 2 of them.
You've been invaded. You've been invaded by the French.
Oh God, no. No. I have really bad knees. I can't do that.
Oh, Jesus. Oh my God.
You went there. You went there.
Do we get an explicit rating on that?
Right.
No, I want to see what's next. Because again, if Ukraine survives, they're in NATO, they're in EU immediately. Finland's in there. I think Switzerland.
Well, they're trying to pass this vote, right? They're
trying to join the EU.
After the first negotiations went nowhere.
I don't know if them joining NATO is
I don't
really
think
ever a good idea.
No.
I mean, I felt that way about Turkey.
It doesn't matter
joining
now. It doesn't matter. Russia has invaded. What else is there? Like, if they can push the Russians out, which I think will happen. Hector is right. The Russians are dependent on conscriptions to fight this war. It is one thing if you want to fight. It's a whole other thing if you're being forced to fight. I think that's happening now. A lot of the Russians that are being captured and that are being killed are not trained. Again, it's a puppet situation. When they say, "Oh, we have 1 million people in the army," I don't believe that. I don't believe that.
At what point, though, does that make his losses at home so great that it might just be worth, leveling Kiev?
But that's the conversation. If the Russians level, like with a bomb, Kiev, I don't know what the world does. We are now back in 1943. That's where we're heading. Because now you're like, what are we going to do with this situation? You're cutting off Russia from any kind of financial, from diplomatic, from consumption. We
have to recognize that the Russian oligarchs and the Russian president and the even, I would say, a majority of the Russian people, we cannot assume that they want what we think they want. They don't necessarily want peace and prosperity. This is the great lie that Americans tell themselves. Everyone wants peace and prosperity.
You mess with their bank account, and they're going to get pissed real quick.
Which we did.
And these oligarchs are starting to lose it. I mean, they're starting to speak out now because they have social media. They're allowed to speak out against what's happening. And again, we're seeing protests in Moscow, which is amazing.
4,000 people were arrested over the weekend because of protesting in Russia.
They were probably conscripted after.
Well, and again, I'm sure that
someone has to work the oil mines.
I'm sure that getting arrested,
my friend.
I'm sure getting arrested in Russia today is not any better than it was 30, 40 years ago.
True.
And
just as bad.
But the protesters have been fighting back against the Russian police. And again, the oligarchs are being vocal about, their resources being cut off.
And again, I go back to demography for a second. I'm going to beat this horse all night. Is that Russia's an interesting demography. Russia has a very interesting demography in the sense that it has the ratio of their boomers to their what would be their millennials is drastically different because they don't have a millennial bulge like we do. Mm-hmm. So when you look at that, it creates the young people are the ones protesting.
Yes.
The young people are the ones upset. The older Russians kind of share Putin's nostalgia. Mm-hmm. They share Putin's, they're mad that people are messing with their bank accounts, absolutely, but they hate. There was a story I read over the weekend that there's a grandpa in Russia who goes into his grandkids' rooms and he sees nothing that's Russian. Everything's Western. And he can't stand that. And if, 2 out of every 3 people is a boomer in Russia, and they all share that nostalgia. So the few grandkids they're having are being raised with Western values. They want that to end. And if it costs them some money to do it, I think politically they're kind of aligned with Putin to achieve that goal.
I think you do have a point, but you have that same position almost in 2 or 3 other hotspots around the world. You have
right, China's the same way. The aging demography.
Yeah, the current demography when it comes to a lot of these bigger powers, these next 10 years, these next 20 years, that's it. They cannot raise an army if they don't act now. It's funny. It takes millennials. It takes 20 years to raise a kid. Who would have thought? Like it takes 20 years to put
30 years after the one-child policy, and you're running out of 30-year-olds.
Well, and they're having the mother of all housing collapses to be seen. But I will say, I come back to the same point. If you put Putin onto his back, and he is now unable to position himself where he can get out of the situation with his head held high, I wouldn't be surprised if he just says F it and just drops a bomb. I wouldn't be surprised. And yes, he will alienate the world. But
what's the response of the West?
What is the response?
And where I think that goes is that you're going to see a rearmament of like countries around the world are going. The fact that Germany is now spending 3% of GDP on defense for the first time,
which we've been trying to get them. This is the thing.
We've been saying this for a
Trump
while.
has been saying you got to spend the money because the Russians are eventually going to do this, and then the Russians do it, and people are upset that Trump didn't do anything about it.
Right, but now all of a sudden the Germans are willing to actually spend some money. The French are actually spending some money on defense. Estonia, Poland is
Germany
Poles
stepped a
are
big time.
filing their teeth. All right,
The Germans had to do it. They were pulled into here.
yeah, and that's a good thing. My position is that an armed society is a polite society to have a Second Amendment conversation.
Well, look, this whole
But you
situation.
can play that with nations as well.
This whole situation has been phenomenal for the Republican platform.
Oh, absolutely.
Because this is going to make the case for the next 10 years on Second Amendment and energy independence.
Energy independence for sure. There's no way we're coming back from this. If Biden tomorrow, the State of the Union is tomorrow, does not say something about energy independence, does not say something
Oh, he's
about...
not. He's
won't-
going to talk about green. He's going to talk about being green, and he's
People-
then going to declare himself the victor
His
of COVID.
approval rating right now on ABC was 36%. That is insane. And now we're on the verge of war. And it's 36%? Are you kidding me? He can do nothing right because it's all just reactions.
Well, it's self-inflicted.
It is all self-inflicted.
Well, and again, what's comical is, for example, you got just about everybody talking about, what's happening in Russia and Ukraine, right? And then you go and NPR is talking about climate change. It's like nobody cares right now. That is the last thing that anybody in Europe, especially the Ukraine, could care about. I would venture to bet that 60% of the global audience out there probably couldn't care less right now about climate change.
Hey, but John Kerry is telling everyone that this is distracting from his climate summit.
That's right.
That he flew in a private jet to get to. I'll say this when it comes to climate change. If you don't have an issue with bombs being dropped in Chernobyl and that not causing a ripple effect with all that kind of waste in that area, I don't know what you're going to do. I don't know. There's no argument here. You want the oil, you don't want the oil. You don't want nuclear power, but you don't want nuclear.
They don't want to produce. They don't want to be bad for. They don't want to be the people producing the oil, but they're okay with buying it because we haven't gone green enough yet. Don't you understand? We haven't gone green
of
enough.
Americans that are like that are going to get really pissy when the other 75% of the country votes someone else in, and it's drill baby drill for the rest of that.
All right, so I believe Baghdad, if I remember correctly, fell in about 3 weeks.
Correct.
No.
We got air superiority.
We had air
within the first
superiority,
day.
and we had
Roughly.
functional control of the city with special forces within 12 hours.
Okay, but I mean, from beginning to end, it was about 3 weeks.
Oh, the war, in the first Gulf War?
Yeah.
No.
In Gulf War 1? Because Gulf War 1 was 3 weeks.
But that was...
But
yes.
we spent most of those 2 weeks just doing air superiority. Gulf War 2, or Iraq round 2, I mean, the statue fell 3 weeks later.
Okay,
Yeah.
so timeline on this. Does Russia sputter out? Tail runs with its tail between its legs back home. Or is there this going to be a long haul?
I mean, my goodness, that's a hard
Because
question.
I didn't expect Russia to be this weak this fast.
Well, that's true. I don't think Russia expected Russia to be this weak this fast.
Sure.
So now they're in a bind because either they start having some big wins very soon,
Which ceasefire talks apparently failed.
Well, no, I'm saying
reports that are just coming in.
They when I say big wins, I mean they need to take the capital.
Yeah, they need to take the capital.
They need to take the capital by force. They need to decapitate the government.
They've yet to take a major city. They've yet to take a major city.
No, I think they took Odessa.
No, they
haven't
did
taken
not take Odessa.
Are we talking about Pasco again?
No, not that Odessa.
Good Lord.
All right. No, the Greeks took that Odessa.
Ooh, too soon. We're not getting congressional district right now.
By the way, we love our Congressman, Bill Rackus. Love you, Gus.
I can't wait to get to your launch party.
Yeah.
Where's it going to be again?
But
Carbon Springs.
Completely outside the district.
Y'all are bad. Y'all. Yeah, no, the Russians either need to take Odessa, they need to very much secure some farmland, some strategic areas, and
You were right the first time.
And they need to they probably need to take the capital. And then they can
prediction. Come on.
They can probably then at that point leave with
3
honor.
weeks or longer.
Oh, much longer. Much
You think
longer.
we'll be in this more longer than 3 weeks? Anibal.
I say I'm going to go under and say we have maybe another week of this. And if we don't see a bomb of some kind, then I don't know where this ends. Because once the lines are encroached, then I don't know where to go from here.
I give it a month. I give it 2 weeks. From the day it started, I give it a month.
I'll say mid-March is when we'll have a
ceasefire.
It's about a month.
Yeah, I don't know. I think this drags into April and May because there's no way. There's no way unless they're willing to drop like a Moab
Russians
or something.
Okay,
but
on
that note, when he put out the threat,
Hector says he gives it 2 weeks. I agree. I truly think it's going to be another week or two.
When Putin put out, the nuclear alerts.
When did he put out?
Oh God!
I'm not even gonna swing at that one. When Putin mentioned the nuclear alerts, right?
Mm-hmm. That mobilized the West,
right? But do you think is it a bluff, or do you think he'd actually do it? I don't think he'd actually do it.
I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised if we see a mushroom cloud over the capital city. I wouldn't be surprised.
I agree with Anibal, and the crazy thing with that is that
I don't think he'd do it.
Well, he doesn't have to.
I think he's all talk.
He doesn't have to because the Belarusian president over the weekend got the Belarusian Congress to accept the notion of arming Belarus with a nuclear weapon. So now that he has
and apparently, even though he's the president of Belarus, he wants to be appointed as the commander-in-chief of the Russian army or something like that.
Right. And I mean, he's a Russian puppet. Absolutely.
That's what happens when you have good knees.
What was amazing in that interview, look up this interview with the Belarusian president.
Belarusian president.
Belarusian. I don't even know how to...
Belarusian. I mean, that's pretty much what he is.
But the interviewer is literally laughing at him.
Yeah.
Because he's talking about how he wants to be in control of the Russian army. He goes, but you're the president of Belarus. How would that even work? And he goes, Putin will figure it out. Putin will make it work.
No, and this is the thing, is that I think they're playing some of these START treaties, and when you read through some of the bilateral treaties that we have with Russia, it's interesting because there is kind of a loophole here that Putin can give Belarus a bomb. And Belarus could use the bomb on Ukraine. And technically, that doesn't violate anything.
I wouldn't be surprised if you see a mushroom cloud somewhere in Ukraine in the next probably 2 weeks. And that's sad to say, but I think...
To me, that's the only way this ends in 2 weeks.
I agree. I think Putin
if he's going to stay conventional, this drags on for 2 months.
Putin will get too frustrated. Now that... Because this is the thing. If
I think he's got more patience than that.
No, I don't think he has any patience whatsoever. He's getting pressure from the oligarchs. He's getting pressure from his people, and his commanders don't want to be killed either. This has now become a key man policy situation. Like, who's going to get killed first? Because someone's going to be in a body bag in the end of the week if they still haven't taken the capital.
Right.
And now you have all these arms,
and we also have reports of Putin's own health.
Correct.
And do I believe
Marco Rubio? That was such a sketchy interview.
Do I believe that or not?
If you could see what I see, you would know. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
That makes it even worse.
That's what's cool about being on the intelligence committee.
The head of the intelligence committee.
That's right. He knows what's really going on.
And that's the thing. All the funds, all the weapons, even more troops are coming through
Who's
Poland.
second in line for if Putin keels over tonight?
Medvedev? Who's the president?
Medvedev? Is he still around?
Medvedev.
Boris?
Boris.
They're all Boris.
Are you still around, Boris?
Ivan.
We're
just gonna stay Russian.
Is there a
names
moose?
now?
Is there a moose somewhere that gets command? It's Russia. I have no idea. I wouldn't be surprised either if there's a moose somewhere on a pasture.
Zelensky wins and takes over Russia. There we go.
And just to cap
like you said, it's a key person issue. So at what point do some of the keys of power sit there and go, okay, this needs to end even if it's in disgrace.
If it's true they have over 5,000 dead Russians, that's a nightmare situation. If it's true that they still cannot have air superiority by the end of this week, that's a nightmare situation.
Well, apparently the Turkish drone strikes have been incredibly effective.
Yeah, because what happens when you have a caravan 3 miles long just sitting outside of
I wonder where Turkey would have gotten drones from.
And they're having their own little currency issue at the moment. I guess someone's paying their bills.
Yeah.
You're welcome, by the way, Turkish Industries.
Love to see the branding on those drones.
You know what? Lockheed Martin has done a great job in the stock market lately.
By the way, shout out to local business Enersys. Enersys, by the way, if for those of you here in the Tampa Bay area, actually provide the battery power for our missile systems.
This is the problem with this show. We know too much
That's right.
and not enough at the same time.
Yeah.
We are just enough plugged in to know what we're talking about, and at the same time, we cannot be on cable.
Not giving.
we cannot be on cable because of the loose lips things you say.
I'm not giving investment advice here, but you might want to look into a little company called Enersys, based out of Pinellas Park, Florida.
I mean, I pass by Lockheed Martin at HQ in Hillsborough County all the time. Bowie's doing a great job. The Russians not so much.
Don't let the schools.
Stratcom or CENTCOM is also here.
I will say this.
I wonder
also,
if there's a connection there.
as someone that lives in Hillsborough County and knows exactly how far away they are from MacDill Air Force Base, we would survive a blast.
Yeah.
I live in Hernando.
Where is that? No one cares.
Huh?
No one cares what that is.
Outside the plaza.
It's outside of everything. You travel in to get into society. Do you guys even have a performing arts center?
What's the performing arts
Exactly.
center?
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for watching The Yard Sign, the most important relevant podcast in politics. Joining me tonight, Anibal, David Cabrera, Chris Licata. And yeah, believe it or not, that is a Hispanic last name. We are, of course, talking Russia, Ukraine.
By birth, not marriage.
We may or may not be having some issues with our Clubhouse feed tonight. I appreciate Hector jumping on there. I'm not sure. Well, we'll see. We'll try to get Hector on if he gets back on there in a little bit. But we normally like to broadcast on Clubhouse as well. But don't forget, if you have missed any part of tonight's show and you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, you can also listen to the audio version of our show on any of the social media platforms, wherever you may be listening to your favorite podcasts. So make sure you sign up at the Tech Overlords, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, iHeartRadio, Odyssey, Samsung podcast platforms, and now we're actually also posting our videos on Rumble. So getting got to get those conservative credentials with the Rumble crowd. All right, so look for us on Rumble as well, and please subscribe if you're on any of those platforms. We're gonna go ahead and transition to some national issues here. Because, I don't know about you guys, but I have been waiting for months now, almost years, to stop wearing my mask. That obviously you can see is on my face right now.
Obviously.
The CDC.
I thought you had to put it on your hand.
Is that where it goes?
I mean, that's what the governor of California said.
See, that's right. You hold your breath,
as
right?
long as you hold your breath.
As long as you hold your breath, right? As long as you hold your breath,
Hold the mask in your hand.
you can take a picture, and then then you put it back on.
People were passing out at the Super Bowl,
right? And then you right, and then one side gets dirty, then you just turn it inside out, and then
it's very difficult.
It's okay that way.
I think so.
As someone on the West Coast, it's very difficult. They have see-through masks. It's very clear. I couldn't tell.
How do you continue to really hold a straight face, hold any credibility, working at the CDC and putting out these guidelines that are obviously dictated by the Democrats at this point and by the president? I mean, they're loosening the restrictions. New York City's dropping their mask mandate. They're now even Congress itself, Nancy Pelosi, saying that they're not going to have to wear masks for the State of the Union. Okay, mind you, Mr. Comorbidities septuagenarian president, who's going to be addressing the nation and happens to be a high-risk COVID recipient
Category.
or potential victim, is going to be front and center. Anyways, so the CDC has decided to relax their guidelines. But again, if you lived in Florida for the past 2 years, I mean, We might as
What
well
guidelines?
be exactly. We might as well be talking about a completely different country. I mean,
it is a different country. First of all,
says it right
kudos.
here.
Do they
I know.
keep any-
No, Johnny,
Florida.
kudos for you for getting through that whole line
Oh my
of
gosh.
communication and not breaking. I was impressed, and like I'm gonna have to like thesaurus some of these words. And two, this is a second country. This nation has been divided for 2 years.
it's not even another. It's almost like an alternate universe.
You literally had people yelling at us for not wearing masks, coming to us for vacations,
Right.
not wearing a mask.
Correct.
In what universe besides the metaverse would this actually be something that would make sense?
What I love is that the very ones that were criticizing us for not wearing masks and following the rules and all this stuff ended up catching COVID like shortly thereafter.
Well, it was interesting because during Delta, it was if you catch COVID, it's because you didn't listen to the science. You're a very, very bad. You're heterodox. You are not blessed by the spirit of the government, and it became a religion. And then during Omicron, when everyone got it, they're like, oh, it's a virus. Everyone's gonna get it, and
Right.
it's just like. And they're like, oh, there's no stopping it. It's like,
But this
that's
cult-
what we said.
this cult of scientists / doctors that were pushing this propaganda, okay, that has now been disproven. Again, how do they, with a straight face, how are they taken seriously anymore at this point?
They're not taken seriously. They're only taken seriously in the halls of DC.
No, but I think what Johnny's asking is in the future, like how does the CDC rebrand itself that when the real threat comes,
this is the
we
thing.
actually believe them.
We will now have an entire generation who is going to remain skeptical of the CDC and whatever Fauci's title is, the whole medical
NIH,
community.
yeah. Well, I say, I mean, the CDC serves an important function, but it should not be exercising it. And I think we've correctly in the judicial.
Well, the
process,
problem is that they'd let themselves be infiltrated essentially by the political ideology.
No, you give people that have been in a broom closet of an office in Washington D.C. a little bit of power, and it goes straight to the head. It's the same thing that the madam from
Fauci really would
Downton
fit in a
Abbey
broom
said
closet.
said the same thing. And also, Fauci shouldn't have a job after his doombuckle of the AIDS epidemic during the 70s and 80s, but yet he's still there because
No, you can't fire government workers.
Exactly, the bureaucracy is so there. So what do you need to do? You need to have, and again,
He should have been gone the minute we found out, A, they were
lied.
testing puppies. They were testing on puppies. B,
how do you survive that? How do you survive that?
the fact that he was
you're not
funneling
elected.
money to the Wuhan lab where we now are almost certain that that this all leaked from. And again, somehow he's managed to maintain his job.
And also, we're not going to get censored for what you just said because it's not 6 months ago.
Right.
Because if it was 6 months ago,
Yeah.
we would have gotten condemned.
Oh, sure.
By the online gods. But now, because it's allowed to be
overlords.
talked about, I don't know the terminology, but now it's like, who knows what's going to happen tomorrow? And it's so frustrating because they are pushing Trump to run. They are pushing for a 45 to run again because he's the only one. They're going to be like, we gave you guys 4 years. You muffed it up in the first year. And now we're just having to wait until Biden croaks over and we get Kamala.
It's like they're literally trying everything they can do to get Trump reelected.
Oh, yeah.
Because
I don't think they're doing that
if we do,
intentionally.
well, and then how do you? I mean, they pushed this out there for so long, and they got the people to believe this so much. Again, let's remember they were the ones that perpetrated, doubt in the vaccine in the first place.
Correct.
Right.
They were the ones out there spreading the doubt about the vaccine.
I'm
in the
not
first
going to
place.
get a Trump vaccine. Blah. Kamala, Biden.
Right.
Are you crazy?
And then they had to obviously walk that back.
Right.
They never apologized. They never explained, why, other than their hate for Trump. And then now for the CDC to relax its guidelines right before the midterm election. So what happens?
Oh, this isn't about midterms. This is about the State of the Union.
Well,
this was
yes.
cover for
Well, I think
Nancy.
it's both.
That's
cover.
how much.
This
That's
is
how
cover.
much. This is cover for Nancy Pelosi to release the mask mandate on Congress without it looking like she's disregarding the CDC.
And then you have
without Congress looking like a bunch of lunatics.
They already look like a bunch of lunatics.
Right.
Her in her Kunta Kente outfit during Black Lives Matter last year.
Well, and who's going to look sane when the
Kneeling in the middle of
Republicans
the
are not
Congress.
wearing the masks and the Democrats are?
They're gonna look like normal people. Like that's you're gonna see the crazies and the not crazies in the same room. It's like watching someone wearing 2 masks in their own vehicle. Like this is literally, and then you Biden
it's all
without a mask.
Is
he gonna speak without a mask, or he's gonna speak with a mask? So you're gonna speak with a mask with people that have masks on? Are you crazy? You're gonna kill everyone in the room.
Speaking of which, the only thing stupider than driving with a mask on is walking with a mask on by yourself
In the Florida
and that's
In
what
the Florida
in the
heat.
Florida
Oh.
heat.
and this is what Biden was doing the other day on the White House lawn. You know, he's out there walking by himself with a mask on. Why?
doing
Because
it- he's
don't
doing
you
his 15
understand
minutes of cardio.
No, it has to do with the cameras. When a camera is on you, you can transmit COVID. But when there's no cameras on you,
That's right.
you're
I don't know
immune.
these things. I don't know these things.
You know,
I've lived
right
in Florida
now,
too
we
long.
should be masked because there's cameras on us.
That's right. Well, COVID only travels at about 5 feet and up.
Yeah.
Which is why at restaurants you can't catch it.
Right,
Because you're
right.
sitting down.
With the plastic shield right in front of you at the bank.
The plastic shield stops everything, especially at the Waffle House.
Don't knock on the Waffle
There's a lot
House.
of things that don't get stopped at the Waffle House.
Don't knock on the Waffle House. The Waffle House is a good place.
You're going to catch a lot of other stuff at the Waffle House
First of all,
before you catch COVID.
I need
I'll
you
tell
to be
that.
nicer because the Waffle House is a 5-star star rating in Hernando County.
We only have one Waffle House in Hernando County, all right? So we got 2 Crackle Barrels,
So
though.
you have, ooh,
Yeah.
fancy.
Oh, man. I don't know. I'd take those odds.
I know, I like that. I'm not going to lie, I love those biscuits.
So, again, yes, is this about the State of the Union? Yes, but it's also about the midterms, and they want to give the appearance. They want to have their little, their little rah rah moment, their little celebration that they've overcome COVID, so that they can hopefully not get destroyed in November.
The beauty of all this is that you still have crazies in political office that want the mask to stay on. DC is trying to get the mask to come back on and for them to mandate.
Well, it's not even the
in
mayor.
DC.
At
I know
this point.
it's
She's
the
lost
city
complete
council.
control.
It's the city council and those little people that also were given a little bit of strength that are now going ape shit when it comes to this. You had that issue with in San Francisco, the school board had a recall election, and 3 of them got all kicked out, and they were all super left Democrats that got kicked out. And the mayor of San Francisco.
Well, how many school board members did we lose? Remember in the first year of COVID?
And we talked about that. We told them the moment that they voted for the mask and for the push back of the school system, we're like, they're out. They're out. There's no way they can win. And they did. They all lost. And again, you're having this on and on and again. Again, I will say this. I was watching the press conference from the CDC saying like, oh, we're going to relax the guidance. And people were asking, well, why haven't you done that before? I was like, well, it's just a guidance. And you're like, yeah, but people are taking that as serious as like as science.
Well, that was the problem is that they put out these guides or the guidance, by what they suggested people should do, and then automatically these municipalities and local governments, state governments, all took it as policy.
Well, because we have to remember back. Originally, it was policy. Originally, the CDC was putting it out.
No, the CDC does not make policy.
Right, the court had to tell them that.
Right.
But at first, they thought, oh, we'll just put it out as policy, and everyone took it as policy, and then. It was like, oh, no, they can't make policy. Oh, well, these are guidelines. I mean, it's like Pirates of the Caribbean.
Well, and at this point, 2 years later,
guidelines.
2 years later, we've come to realize that, again, the masks didn't do anything.
Right.
The lockdowns didn't do anything other than hurt the most vulnerable on both ends of our society, which were the seniors and the kids. Those were the ones that suffered the most in all of this.
The amount of learning issues that kids are having, the social issues that they're having, that's going to mark an entire generation, which you, Jonny, have already said, that we're building this generation that will never trust the science again.
I mean, I find it interesting that
Florida's going to take over the world.
Yeah, well, that's where I was going with that, was that,
because all the other kids are going to have learning disabilities.
Right. I mean, the counties that didn't.
Have you been to
Stop.
Oh, too soon. Too soon. Not soon enough.
But it's kids in California are going to have a harder time
Right.
and not be as caught up academically.
It's going to be interesting what we see
in the interstate
10, 15, and 20
scores.
years from now.
Yeah.
So, all right. On that note, we're going to go ahead and move on to our next topic. Again, thank you, everybody, for watching. We appreciate you doing so. We do this every Monday night, 7 o'clock, 7-ish here on the social webs. Don't forget, you can subscribe, review, share this episode. We encourage you to do so as we continue to grow the show. Thank you to everybody listening on the audio version of our podcast. It's growing exponentially every single week. Allegedly. And our goal is now to reach the top 100 podcasts in the country, and I certainly think that with your support we can do that. Don't forget, if you haven't done so already, you can subscribe to the audio version of our podcast over at the Tech Overlords at Google, Apple, Spotify, Audible, Amazon, iHeartRadio, Odyssey, Samsung Podcasts, and if you still want the video version, you can now check us out on Rumble as well. And we typically like to simulcast on Clubhouse, which I think may or may not be having some issues tonight, but we'll get that figured out. Our last topic of the day is the Scotus Nominee. President Biden said that he was going to nominate an African American woman to the Supreme Court, and he has done so. It's one of those things where it's like you have to wonder, is it complete incompetency or is it just because for the sake of identity politics that they just run with it? Because what's coming out already about the nominee is equal to kind of like the things that we were hearing about Kamala Harris. Someone who, not so much on the personal side, but on the professional side, someone that was willing to go along to get along and do whatever it took to advance her career. And so, for instance, there was a piece that came out about a gentleman that was, I kid you not, arrested with 8 ounces of weed. He was charged with selling 8 ounces of weed. Now, don't get me wrong. It was one of these 3-strike situations, right? Which sometimes comes with minimum sentencing. Okay. But she sentenced this guy for 8 ounces of weed to 12 years in prison. Now, you're going to tell me in the era of Black Lives Matter, in the area of criminal justice reform, that this is a woman that deserves a seat on the Supreme Court? Or that Democrats are going to be happy with somebody like that on the Supreme Court? I mean, they obviously swallowed the pill for Kamala.
Well, when it comes to Justice, or she'll become Justice Johnson, right?
I think so, yeah.
And when it comes to her, what's interesting about her, and my theory behind all this, is that she clerked for Breyer.
Right.
And so, to me, this doesn't sound like the president really had any say. I think this was decided a year ago. I think this was decided more than a year ago. And when he said, "Hey, I'm going to nominate a black female," he was talking about her way in advance, because he had already worked out a deal with Breyer that Breyer would retire at some point during his term, and that Breyer would pick his successor. In the same way that Justice Kennedy picked his successor. Justice Kennedy made the same deal. And, because they like picking their own clerks. They feel like it's... So I don't know if this has so club, much right? to do...
I mean, it's a club. And so, okay, so the nominee, her name is Ketanji Brown Jackson.
Jackson, not Johnson.
Yeah, Ketanji Brown Jackson. And you're right, she did work for Justice Breyer. And I think it was President Obama who advanced her to the District Court of Appeals. And again,
no. President Obama put her on the bench. She was not elevated to the Federal Circuit of Appeals until February of last year.
Okay,
which she got Republicans and Democrats to vote.
Well, but they reported on this. They were saying that the Biden administration was moving people around, basically to prepare for this.
Right.
Yeah,
but the other thing is that she's been confirmed by the Senate twice.
Yeah, might as well get these people vetted now, knowing that you're going to have a fight to begin with.
Well, this is one of the things. Lindsey Graham supposedly was one of the votes in her favor,
which I think he did that correctly. So I will say this, just some correction: it was not the current It was not Jackson that put the individual into prison for 12 years. That was Michelle Childs.
That was the other one under consideration.
That was she was in third place at the moment. At that time, she is the one that actually sentenced the man to 12 years of selling 8 ounces of weed. Not the current nominee for the bench. Miss B. Jackson has had a pretty interesting time on the bench. Not that much time, which is actually perfect because you don't know what's going on. I will say this: I don't think the Republicans should have any form of resistance in this pick. I think they need to. I think they need to move on. They need to put her up, vote, put her on the bench. You know why? Because this does nothing for the bench. This doesn't change the numbers. It doesn't change.
It is
our
a direct one-for-one swap.
It's only a lose-lose situation.
No.
If they fight her, it becomes an issue.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
And that's why it's not a lose-lose situation. You could be like, put her in. Let's do it.
Right.
Because let's move forward.
Now, the Sabatini wing of the party will set their hair on fire.
Oh my God, they'll call everyone on this show a rhino.
Yeah. They already do.
Oh, that's right. Also, Hillsborough County has been blue its entire life.
That's not true.
I know it's not true. But Jim Warshaw did an entire interview for 3 minutes and spoke like someone that is not very well educated on the history of Hillsborough County politics.
Right.
So back to the Supreme Court justice. But no, it does nothing for the conservative movement. It does nothing for the Republican Party to
fight.
Now, what I will say is that, I mean, the grandstanding on the Judiciary Committee is going to be, I mean, just prime time television.
Perfect.
Because, they're just like with Gorsuch or Kavanaugh, all the Democrats on the Judiciary Committee are like, oh, there's cameras on us. Yay.
Yeah, they're all looking for video reels.
Yeah, video reels. Now, what's interesting is this go around is none of them are looking for video reels for their own 2024 run. They're all looking for video reels to promote themselves for cabinet positions, in the next administration,
which we all know is coming quickly.
Yeah, but so I mean, it'll make for some good TV. But at the end of the day, I think they'll sit there and they'll go, okay, push her through and put her on the bench. And you know what I kind of look forward to in a weird way is that her and ACB are the same age.
51.
So, yeah, they're both 51, so they're going to.
It's a good age.
Well, what I'm saying is, I think there's the possibility of seeing another friendship on the court.
Yes,
that is similar to RGB and Scalia.
Oh, they were adorable together.
And having a friendship on the court between the left and the right.
It's true.
I know, but the way you talk about it makes it seem like they came out of some sitcom or something.
Well, no, the
and they disagree on everything politically, but they can actually be friends.
Right.
Yeah, the feminist icon RBJ and the RBG, sorry,
right.
and the most conservative of conservatives were friends, and they actually were able to have conversations.
They went on vacation in India with their spouses together.
And that shows.
And at one time, our
that's
Congress.
the example that we need to have. And at one Democrats and Republicans can be friends.
Yeah. Well, and at one time, our Congress was like that.
Right. But
then they got rid of earmarks.
Is that? Are you saying we should bring back earmarks?
No, I'm just saying that.
Honestly,
no. Trump made that gaffe, and we're not.
Would love to get that back. Honestly, I need a race stadium.
I need a race stadium. Oh my goodness, no.
Ken Hagen, I am all for the plans that you have in that head of yours. I would love to see it come to fruition.
Is he cutting you a check? Because I ain't getting a check.
I ain't getting no check. We are actually going to be getting a check soon, though. Come back, watch for promotions and advertising because we actually might get a check.
We are going to have, I think, for March. Yes, starting in March.
For March, we actually will get a check.
I think we're going to have our first endorsement deal.
I am the one cutting it.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I mean, yes. I mean, in the greater scheme of politics, yes. Obviously, I hope that they get along, and and this is going to be my issue. Yes, there's going to be a lot of grandstanding, and I wish that Republicans would have the clarity, to realize that this isn't worth a fight.
You're asking.
But part of me, right, exactly. Part of me thinks that again, the most fervent radioactive part of the party is going to go nuts over this nomination, and anybody who votes for her is going to turn rabid on them.
It's going to be insane. And that's the sad part. As someone that all of us are under the age of 42.
Yes.
40, yes. With all of us in the room being under the age of 42, it makes us very upset when you see these individuals that are grandstanding in local politics and are bashing what's happening on the national level. Again, this is something that we don't need to worry about. We don't need to talk about. Just pass it, push it through, move on. Because you know why? There's so many more things to talk about with the Biden administration than anything else before. I wouldn't be surprised if Michelle Childs was the one that they were going to nominate, and then that thing blows up with her putting black people in prison, not like the vice president. And so with that situation in hand, there's so much to talk about. Maybe that's why I picked her. I know. I mean, he put black people on buses. So I don't know what we're going to do as a Republican Party when you have these positions with inside the tent that are so oppositely opposed, that everything that the administration does is wrong and everything that Trump does is right. That's not reality. And so I don't know where we go with this, because a large portion of the population and the party does not want to have to deal with that conversation.
And the problem is that we'll never overcome that. We'll never beat that until people stop getting elected for running that way.
Correct.
Because you're going to have somebody like Sabatini who's running, and he's a flamethrower, and his scorched earth approach is getting him a lot of endorsements and getting him a lot of money, and he could possibly end up in Congress. He very likely could end up in Congress. And so it only encourages that type of behavior. As I said, as I've said for 5 years now, almost 6 years, the only reason we got Trump was because of these very conservative, the very same conservative consultants, political consultants that keep pushing their candidates farther and farther to the right, okay, that then wanted to become never Trumpers when Trump got elected. They were the ones that created this mess. They were the ones that laid the foundation for a president like Trump to come along, because they had pushed the party so far to the right that it was easy to just go ahead and throw all the red meat all day long, all the red meat all day long. It doesn't take a genius to figure out how to win the nomination for the Republican Party.
And the groundwork is being done now that we have Trump for another 4 years, and I'm looking forward to it. At least it's someone I can deal with. I cannot deal with this administration. I don't know who's in power. I don't know who's in leadership. From Charlemagne the God to someone to Rogan, no one knows who is in charge, because
who's running the country.
Running the country? I don't believe the president is running the country, because these policies make absolutely no sense.
Honestly, I don't think any one person is.
I don't think so either. If you look at how
disjointed everything is.
I mean, but it's interesting, because I think if you look through the Democratic administrations going back to the Carter administration, there has been an attempt to, anytime the Democrats are in charge, that Democratic president does run by committee, does govern by committee. They want to bring in and it's not even their actual cabinet. It's like their circle of people, their kitchen cabinet.
Non-elected officials.
Right. Not Senate confirmed, their kitchen cabinet, their people. They bring these people in, and they kind of have, they throw it around a little bit. But there's a consensus that's built, not we throw it around a little bit and then the president decides. I'm afraid that's what's going on in the war room.
Yeah, it's not like the West Wing, where at the end of the day, the president is the one that makes a decision. Yeah. He's the one that takes the hit or takes the praise. Here, I agree. I think it's by committee. I think a lot of people are in the room making these decisions, and the president is just sitting there eating pudding. Oh, I love it. Eating pudding and not knowing what's going on because it's past his bedtime. He hasn't had 17 hours of sleep. Like, these are the problems. These are the things that we're having. And now, because of a weak president, you're having the rest of the world take advantage of the situation, and it's going to deteriorate more and more and more. And you would have assumed that Biden, who has been in office and has never had a real job in his life, would have some understanding of how government works, but right now you don't see it. And he's going to be on the State of Union. Any drinking party tomorrow during the State of the Union, everyone's getting drunk, because he's going to have so many gaffes and so many inability to speak. And this man has been speaking forever, not maybe plagiarizing, but he's still been speaking. And it's just, what is he going to do? What's tomorrow going to look like? I don't know. And that's what's freaking me out. I do not know. And what happens when there is a mushroom cloud over Kyiv.
And what I find the most ridiculous is that you have people out there who are trying to make the case that Biden is somehow the strong man or the leader or the bright light in this whole situation with Russia and Ukraine.
I mean, I'm not surprised by that at all because the man has made a career out of plagiarizing. So why not let the Europeans, figure out what they want to do and then sit back and say, well, I'm the leader of the free world, so I did that. But I was asleep in the corner.
Right.
Over
and what
there.
has he really done?
But I did that because I'm the president.
Yeah.
So it's leading from behind and then taking credit for whatever the accomplishment is,
which he's always done.
Yeah,
He's always gone with the change of the wind.
Right, and so he'll take credit for it. So there's this weird, I did that, but it was in. And again, this comes back around to leadership by committee. On the domestic front, it's let's throw it around. On the international front, he sits in a room with a bunch of European leaders, and they throw it around, and he lets a consensus build. We're going to build, instead of, at the end of the day, once everyone's done talking, we're going to, the president of the United States is going to make a decision for the West because he is the leader of the free world. And that's the Republican model of how the executive branch works, how the United States role in the world. The Democratic model is we're on a stage of equals. And I'm sorry, but well,
that's what's gotten us into this mess in the first place.
I ain't equal to nobody as America. I ain't equal to nobody in the world. What? Okay, I'll say this right now. We need to get rid of the UN.
Muhammad Ali over there?
We need to get rid of the United Nations when a country that is the head of the UN, the current chairman of the UN is
Security
able to
Council,
the Security Council is able
the
to
Russian
the Russians that are invading. They're able to veto a bill to sanction themselves. It doesn't make any sense. You know what you should do? You should redo the bylaws and say that if you are the aggressor of an invading company, you are not allowed to vote in the UN.
No.
Just dismantle the whole freaking thing.
You're not going to dismantle it. There's way too much money.
I wouldn't even dismantle it by resolution.
Or move it to Switzerland.
Or there's already one in Switzerland.
I would not dismantle it by resolution or
just pass a bill.
No.
Just kick them out of New York.
No.
Right. Simply, no. All that has to happen is the next Republican president withdraw from the United Nations.
That's it. Then it means nothing.
And I mean, we fund 60% of the United Nations.
They do two things really well. They feed people, and they spread medicine around. That's all they do. You know what? You no longer have.
And even that, I'm sure that there's probably a lot of nefarious things happening underneath all that.
What? Haiti? What?
Yeah.
What?
Right.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for watching The Yard Sign, the most important relevant podcast in politics, the most Hispanic podcast in conservative politics.
Allegedly.
That's for sure. We appreciate you being here. Anibal, David Cabrera, Chris Licata, Jonny Torres. One last thing. Anibal, go.
I truly... We're going to lose our producer.
And go.
The economic collapse of the... Give me a camera. Give me a camera.
Ooh, that was ugly.
I know. The economic collapse of the Russian ruble continues as it's dropped 30% today, and all Russian-based stocks that were on the NASDAQ stopped trading because of inconsistency of its trading platforms. I see a continual degradation of their currencies, and actually there was reports of a Russian oligarch's yacht being put with explosives. So things are starting to tense up there, Jonny.
What I'm actually surprised in is that Russia isn't taking these anonymous attacks as American attacks, because why wouldn't you connect the dots there and be like, well, most of these anonymous, I don't know. To me, I always see anonymous as like a United States-based organization. Even though they're global.
There's a lot of Germans.
There's a lot of Germans.
A lot of Germans in a lot of Germans in South America.
Oh my God. All right, my one last thing is actually kudos to the IOC and FIFA. We'll get to him in a second. The internet, of course, just about a week too late, but International Olympic Committee urging other sporting events, other major sporting events, global sporting events, to basically kick Russia out or prevent them from playing in any other global sporting events. And FIFA quickly, I think, jumped into that bandwagon and has prohibited them from, I guess, any further qualifications for the World Cup. We'll see. If that's going to affect golf, tennis, what other, any of these other kind of global tournaments out there. But I thought that was a really kind of unique way. I mean, obviously, it's kind of the BS way for the IOC to come out and do it after they just had their Winter Olympics. Awfully convenient. Once again, favoring the Russians after. But I think they're going to. I think they said they might. I don't think they said they were going to strip the medals. They are going to punish the Russians somehow. I think the IOC did say. But I felt, at least, I'm just giving them kudos for the fact that they came out and they're telling these other organizations to, not to reward the Russians by allowing them to play. So, I think that's a start. Chris Licata, one last thing.
For my one last thing, I'll say that I've seen a lot of people, like everyone, posting the Ukrainian flag on their Facebook page.
Oh, I was going to say, there's people everywhere.
Yeah, everyone is I stand in solidarity with Ukraine, and I really just want to encourage people, find an international nonprofit that is actually helping the women and kids who
Bitcoin.
who are leaving Ukraine and walking into Poland by the hundreds of thousands. They need help, and actually give charity, not just I did my morality for the day because I put a Ukrainian flag on my Facebook page.
Well, I said Bitcoin, obviously, it's somewhat tongue in cheek, but in reality, I mean, there are people donating cryptocurrency to the Ukraine because, again, it's one of the ways that I think they can be helped the most.
Yeah, I mean, you can help on the war effort, or you can help also on the I'm sure there's plenty of mission trips and stuff that are helping the refugees who are walking into Poland by the
all the surrounding nations are they're going to have a real hard time with the influx
absorbing the Ukrainian people.
Yeah, but hopefully, again, this won't last too long. So, with that being said, the Ukrainian people are in our prayers, and kudos to all the Russians out there who are protesting the actions of Putin and his cronies. But again, we'll be back here to talk all about it next Monday night, 7:00 on Facebook, YouTube, and wherever else you may be catching the show. Don't forget to subscribe to the audio portion of the show over at the Tech Overlords. On behalf of Anibal, David Cabrera, Chris Licata, I'm Jonny Torres. This has been the Yard Sign. Good night, everybody. Good night.